For more on this, I spoke earlier with journalist Max Blumenthal, who recently returned from Israel, where he's been reporting for 3.5 months. We began by first looking at some of Max's reporting from Jerusalem on the loyalty oath.
So would you swear loyalty to the Christian state of the U.S.?
The U.S. is not a Christian state.
But if they asked you?
But it's not Christian. If they would ask me, then it would be the U.S.
Why not?
Because the U.S. is freedom for all, freedom of religion.
So if you were a Palestinian, would you swear loyalty to the Jewish state?
If I agreed with what they had to say, yes. If not, then I'd move.
Yeah, I mean, I love Israel, but like if they do something wrong, I'm not going to stand by it.
Really? Like what would be wrong?
Like murdering billions of people.
So you think maybe like people shouldn't swear loyalty to it if Israel goes crazy?
I don't know. If Israel goes, I don't know.
Or like
I don't think anybody should swear loyalty to any country if the country does something wrong.
Like bombing Gaza with white phosphorus or something.
No, not like that.
So, Mr. Blumenthal, talk to us a little bit about those interviews you conducted. Did you find then that there was a broad support for this law in Israel then?
Yeah, those interviews that I conducted were conducted in central Jerusalem, primarily with American and Canadian Jews who were studying at yeshivas in Jerusalem, and recent immigrants to Israel who immigrated for ideological reasons because they were Zionists. And most of them supported the loyalty law. I had them read an oath on camera, which was loosely based on the Wehrmacht oath to Hitler. I changed Hitler to the Jewish state, and what I wanted to illustrate is the susceptibility of average citizens, including young people, to fascist ploys, to the lures of fascism. Most of them were happy to read this loyalty oath and to swear loyalty to the Jewish state of Israel, even if they weren't citizens of Israel. And this you know, is a really disturbing trend within Israeli society, where people who are unable to define what a Jew exactly is, including Benjamin Netanyahu, who is an atheist, or Avigdor Lieberman, the foreign minister, who leads a proto-fascist party, Yisrael Beitenu, that's been pushing for this law, and is himself an atheist, who has a constituency of Russian immigrants who do not practice Judaism generally, who are secular, and who are at the same time pushing for civil marriage, non-religious marriage, and they're seeking to define Israel as a Jewish state. So Israel is in an identity crisis, and this law reflects that. It also reflects a deep-seated cynicism.
Well, but let me just follow up a little bit on some of the points you've made there, because when we talk about this loyalty oath, I mean, aren't there already laws on the books declaring Israel a Jewish state? So I'm wondering, who is this law directed at specifically?
Well, this law is an amendment to the citizenship law. So anyone seeking to become a new citizen of Israel would have to swear loyalty to the Jewish state, and it's currently not in it's not in the current citizenship law. But this law is cynical, as I said, because the state of Israel, the government of Israel, can't define what a Jew is, and refuses to accept the religious halakhic definition of a Jew. So this law is targeted at the Palestinian citizens and residents of Israel in order to make their lives more difficult, to further strip them of their rights, and to put more pressure on them, basically to leave. In my opinion, it's a prelude to transfer. And Avigdor Lieberman went before the United Nations recently and declared that the Palestinian citizens of Israel should be transferred into Palestinian territory. So what we're seeing is the beginning of a disturbing trend in the mask lifting off of Israel's veneer, I think a somewhat false veneer, of democracy. This is the direction Israel's heading in.
So do you think that this is
strips its minorities of rights.
Is it then paving the way, would you say, then, for open and legal discrimination of non-Jews in Israel?
Well, there already is open and legal discrimination of non-Jews in Israel. One of the first laws passed after the establishment of the State of Israel, the absentee law in 1949, openly discriminates against Palestinians who were forced out of their homes and forced off of their property in 1948, and prevents them from returning to their property. And we've seen law after law discriminating against the Palestinian minority. So this is just part of a long process, I think, of putting pressure on the Palestinian minority inside Israel to basically leave or accept a second-class status. And according to the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, it's one of 14 anti-democratic bills that have been introduced in the Knesset. and which are likely to pass, including a bill that says that anyone who convinces another person to be disloyal to the Jewish state of Israel will go to prison for 1 year. This law is directed against the Palestinian legislators in the Knesset.
Well, we're about to take a short break. Still to come in the next half hour. Reaching out to voters, President Obama makes a push for party support in the midterm elections. And fearing the worst, Haitian riot police prepare for a violent election. But is it the right approach?